started, and then I'm going to turn it over to her. We've got some great content today to go over. We'll start with introductions today. We'll just do name, any affiliation you want to share. Let's see, what would be something springy? What's your favorite kind of spring tradition? What do you do in your family for spring? So my name's Cindy Willard. I'm facilitating on the Blueprint. My favorite thing about spring is tulips and hyacinths, because my family is Dutch, and so bulbs are a big part of our tradition in our family. So I look forward to the flowers blooming, which should be coming pretty soon.
I'm Carrie Thielen. I'm with the Department of Education School Nutrition Unit, and similar to that, I'm looking forward to, I've been saying it for 4 years, that I was going to start trying to do landscaping. So I'd like to plant some flowers here.
Hi, I'm Naomi Stenson from the Department of Public Health, and I think I'm looking forward to bike riding more. It's nice out.
Hi, I'm Melissa Tramontana. I'm with the USDA Food and Nutrition Service in the Denver office, the regional office. I work with CACFP and summer programs. And I don't think that there's anything I don't like about spring. So I'm looking forward to the warm weather. I just moved into a new house, so certainly looking forward to landscaping the backyard. And I have a plum tree in my front yard I'm pretty excited about. So I'm looking forward to seeing the flowers.
So I'm Randy Wickstrom, and I'm with the Colorado League of Charter Schools, but I work across a number of projects that involve food and hunger. Hi, Kathy. This morning I got a little surprise. We had a mama duck and a daddy duck in our yard. So that was my little spring surprise, and I think they were looking for a place to nest, and I was like, pick us, pick us, pick us. But they flew away. That was that.
Hi, good morning. My name is Teresa Pena, and I work for Denver Public Schools in the Food and Nutrition Services team. And my favorite part of spring is the warm days and cool nights.
Hi, I'm Megan Squires. I also work with Melissa at the USDA regional office on the school meals team. And my favorite part about spring is hearing the birds in the morning.
I'm Deborah Cameron with the Department of Human Services, and my favorite thing is to go on the trail hikes in the mountains, and we just did our first trails last weekend.
Hi, I'm Julie Salerno. I work in the Nutrition Network Division with the Food Bank of the Rockies. I guess I am most excited to just be able to put my winter coats and boots away and get those lighter jackets out.
I'm Kathy Schmelter.
Okay. Hi, I'm Kathy Schmelter. I also work in Nutrition Network with Food Bank of the Rockies. And I think my favorite thing about spring is I actually do have birds that nest in my tree. I have 3 nests, so it's always great to see the baby birds.
Hey, my name is Kevin Warner. I'm a program manager with Trailhead Institute. We're the program office for the Blueprint. So if you all need anything with regards to any of the accommodations or anything, please let us know. Favorite thing for spring is just getting like the bike back outside and running outside and just doing all those outdoor activities. So thanks.
Hi, my name is Andrew Stricker. I'm also with Trailhead. And my favorite thing about spring, getting outside and playing in the mud with my son. He's just turning 3.
Hi, I'm Lauren Rhodes. I'm with the Food Bank for Larimer County and excited to join this group. I would say my favorite and hated part of spring is getting back into running. I went for my first run outside in like 6 months on Monday, and I am still feeling it. So it's good and bad.
Hi, I'm Gabby Warner with CDE School Nutrition Unit, and my favorite part of spring is a spring vacation happening on Saturday for a week. So.
Hi, I'm Jessica from Livewell, Colorado, and my favorite part of spring is we're currently trying to woo some northern flicker woodpeckers to our backyard, and they are around and they've been eating the suet, so it's exciting. We've got a box for them. We hope we get babies this year.
Hi, my name is Jackie Pines. I'm the administrative coordinator over at Family Resource Center. I'm also taking notes for Patty Velasquez, who's the programs manager. And I think so my favorite part about spring is that it's later, so being able to like read or eat or do anything outside past like 4:30 is awesome.
Jennifer Banyan, I'm a consultant for the Blueprint. I really look forward to moving from the indoor pool to the outdoor pool at my gym and taking pictures of the itty bitty teeny tiny cows that look like Labradors when they're running because they don't know they're not cows yet.
I'm Michelle Ames. I provide communication support for the Blueprint, and my favorite spring thing, which I'm trying to convince my children is really a real spring thing in Colorado, is taking that very first really muddy hike, right? The one where you accidentally end up to your shins. I think that's a Colorado tradition. My kid's not so excited about it, but I'm working.
Great. Khadija, I think you stepped out when we were on your side of the table. I'll let you go, and then we'll go to our folks who are joining us remotely.
I'll cue that for every time I speak. I am a consultant with the Blueprint in the areas of diversity, equity, and inclusivity.
Great. We've got a number of folks joining us remotely this morning. So the person whose face I can see, so C. Waite, we'll have you introduce yourself.
Hello, that's me. I'm Carolyn Waite, and I work for Share Our Strengths No Kid Hungry campaign based in Washington, D.C. So my favorite part of spring are the cherry blossoms, and we are set to hit peak bloom in just a few days.
Great, thank you. Dee Vega, we'll go to you next. You might have to unmute.
I just unmuted her.
There you go. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
I am Doug Vega. I'm with Jewish Family Service, and my favorite part of spring is baseball's back.
Opening day today, right? Rockies in Florida. Erica Edwards.
Correct.
So I think perhaps we are on hold. I think that's what I'm getting from this. This might be our hold music today. So Erica, we will come back to you and or enjoy the sounds here. Okay, Danielle, we'll come to you next.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm texting Erica to tell her hold music is lovely. I am joining you remotely today. I'm sorry that I can't be there. I miss all of your faces. I am the Director of Nutrition Services for Greeley-Evans School District 6. And like Kevin and Lauren, my favorite thing about spring is getting to go outside to run and bike.
Great, thank you. Stephanie. Looks like you might be on mute on your phone.
Hello.
Hi.
Can you all hear me?
Yeah, no. Yes.
Oh, sorry. Hey, this is Stephanie Perez Carrillo with the Children's Campaign. And my favorite spring activity, a lot of others have echoed, but maybe just getting outside and riding my bike. And yeah.
Awesome, thank you. And then we have a phone number, which is 303-868-7192.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Ashley Mullen, and I am the summer program supervisor with CDE, Office of School Nutrition. And the thing I like most about spring are the spring flowers and tulips in particular.
Wonderful. Anybody else remotely that we have missed this morning? Okay, wonderful. Well, just one quick item to touch on before we get to Carolyn this morning. There is a letter in your packet, and I imagine many of you received an email from Kevin earlier in the week. This is about a rule change for SNAP for able-bodied adults with dependents. It is a letter that was crafted by the policy folks here at the Health Foundation. The Governing Council is signing this on behalf of the Blueprint, and they're requesting that other individuals and organizations that are interested in signing on to this letter do so. If you are interested, we request that you share that support with Alexis Waitman by tomorrow. The comments have to be turned in by April 2nd, which is the beginning of next week, as we all know. So interested in having folks sign on to support this letter, and if you want to do that, email Alexis with that information. The other request on that is that individual comments are needed as well, and there's some great information through our partners at Hunger Free Colorado on how to submit your own individual comment to share your view on this as well. And all that information was sent by Kevin. It's also available on the Hunger Free Colorado website if you're interested in submitting an individual comment. Again, everything is due by April 2nd, so this is pretty timely. And if you're interested in getting involved in that, you can take action today or tomorrow. That would be great. So I will stop with that, and we have our first presentation this morning from Carolyn. Is there any introduction that we want to do for Carolyn, or are we ready for her to take it away? Okay, fantastic. It's all you,
Great.
Carolyn.
Thank you so much for having me. So I know in the last meeting, everyone went around and talked a little bit about their organizations and what they had to offer. And since I'm a little late joining your work group, I'm going to do that this meeting, so you all have a better sense of why I'm joining your calls from Washington. So like I said, I work for Share Our Strength's No Kid Hungry campaign. And so I just wanted to give a little bit of an overview about our organization, since there can sometimes be a little bit of name confusion. So yeah, Kevin, if you want to go to that next slide that you had up briefly. So No Kid Hungry is a campaign by Share Our Strength. So Share Our Strength is a nonprofit organization dedicated to ending hunger and poverty. And we actually work both in the US and internationally. And we have multiple campaigns. So many of you may be familiar with Cooking Matters. Colleen Zubik, I know, has been involved with the Blueprint. She runs our Colorado Cooking Matters office. And so No Kid Hungry is another campaign by Share Our Strength. So we work with our Cooking Matters partners, but we kind of do our own thing. And then we also have another arm called Community Wealth Partners. So we go to the next slide. So the No Kid Hungry campaign is all about ending childhood hunger here in the US. So we do a lot of different things to make that happen. We do a lot of grant making to schools and nonprofits and meal sites so that they have the equipment and tools that they need to operate meal programs, since we know that the reimbursements don't always cover those extra things to get started or to expand. We also have an advocacy team, so we work on state and federal legislation and policy. We have a team that looks at research, commissions research, works with researchers to get a better understanding for why kids are hungry, what's working, what kind of impact we're making. Obviously, we have our Cooking Matters team that we work with too, and we know that nutrition education and education on how to shop for and prepare healthy food is a really important piece of ending child hunger. And we work with a lot of state and local organizations just to provide technical assistance and strategies that help them with implementing child nutrition programs and addressing child hunger in their communities. So on the next slide, just again, an overview of how the No Kid Hungry campaign works. I am a member of our team called the Center for Best Practices, and I'll talk a little bit more about what we do. But you may have come across some of my colleagues who work on other teams and other pieces of your work. Again, we have a whole team dedicated to grant making. We have a whole team dedicated to state and federal advocacy. We have a national partnerships team. They work a lot with the School Nutrition Association and other national groups. So I know I met Danielle Bach through our national partnerships team and our work with the School Nutrition Association. We also have a field team that leads state partnerships, and we also have some state-based staffed in some select areas. We have a whole support team that helps to coordinate all of this work that goes on. And we have a data analysis team that just helps us to get a better sense of where there are gaps and opportunities, both at the national level and at specific state and local levels. Go to the next slide. So this just gives you a sense of where we work and that we work differently in different places. So there are some states, just because there are so many kids there and such a large amount of need, that we do more extensive work and have some state-based staff. So California, Texas, and Florida, those red states. States where we work a lot on school breakfast because we've been involved in passing state legislation there, or we're helping partners on the ground with implementation of breakfast legislation. Just other states where we have partnerships, those purple states, just based on, you know, what was the opportunity there in terms of a willing partner, or perhaps a governor or first lady that was really interested in addressing child hunger and interested in working with us. So those kind of relationships develop organically over time. And then we do grant making in all 50 states. So there's something going on in every state, no matter what. And then we also started running a program called our School Breakfast Leadership Institute. So we'll pull a small number of states in for really intensive planning meetings to develop a plan to extend school breakfast. So that's just a quick example of where we work and how we work. But again, it looks different in every state just based on who the partners are, what the needs are, and what the opportunities are. And if you want to go on to the next slide, that's more of a reference. I'm not going to read that off, but that just, again, gives you a sense of where we're working, who we're working with, and who here is a contact on that. If you want to go on to the next slide. So within the Center for Best Practices, that's my team. I'm on the team that does education and training. So webinars, resource development, speaking at conferences, things like that. We also have an innovation team, and so they specifically, you know, kind of seek out what are the problems in operating child nutrition programs and addressing hunger, and what are some new ways that we can address that. And so they'll do pilot studies or offer grants to organizations that are trying something new and different. And then that helps to inform the work of the education and training team on, you know, what we broadly promote. So we don't necessarily want to go around promoting an idea that's been untested. We don't know if it's really worth the investment, or if it, you know, doesn't really pan out in the end. So that's why we have our innovation team to help us figure out what's really going to work and drive change. And then a research and policy analysis team, so that we can also learn from research that others are doing, or to figure out what are the needs that, you know, our innovation team may need to address, or that our education team would address. If you go to the next slide. So just in general, the Center for Best Practices team that I'm part of, we learn from the program's tactics and policies that are making an impact around the country, develop evidence-based resources and guidance, and share best practices with our stakeholders working to end child hunger. And so I think this slide kind of summarizes why I'm here, and how I may be useful. You know, we work with partners all across the country, and so as you discuss what you think may work in your communities, hopefully I can also bring knowledge of what's worked in other states and other communities, so that you can, you know, refine your plans based on what's been successful elsewhere, or learn from others' mistakes and challenges along the way, so that you can, you know, work most effectively. And then I'm also just really excited to learn from you, because obviously the great work happening here could also inform our work in other places. So I just hope to be a big support and kind of help to kind of further this positive feedback loop of learning what works and sharing what works with others. If you want to go to the next slide. So here are just a handful of examples of what the Center for Best Practices does. Implementation resources for schools and sponsoring organizations on how to start these programs, how to expand their reach and run them better. Toolkits for different things. We have like a whole mobile meals toolkit for summer that I know Dan Sharp, for example, has used, and others have used to really expand their summer mobile meals programs. We do webinars on all sorts of different topics, breakfast, summer meals, and after school. Again, research and policy analysis. So we have a lot of issue briefs, summaries of different state and local policies and what their impact was. Issue briefs, reports, stakeholder convenings. We just did one on rural hunger, so specifically diving into that issue across programs. We develop outreach materials. I'll share a whole site dedicated to summer meals outreach materials. but that also includes that little snippet up at the top right there, the text food to 877-877. That's our texting hotline that we've run for 5 or 6 years now. That's gotten really successful. And also based on that, we have a really helpful dashboard now where you can look up in what specific like zip codes and cities have people sent text messages looking for summer meal sites. And then you can also see if they sent a text message looking for a site and didn't get a result back. So there you know that you may have an opportunity to expand because there's interest in summer meals, but no one meeting that need, at least not at the time that people are texting. Like I said, we run innovation pilots, we do qualitative research, co-creation sessions, you know, again, working with schools and other organizations to figure out what's going to work best for them. And I also just want to highlight that map there with all the speckles is our averaged area eligibility map. So that's another tool to help people figure out where they could run summer meals based on the USDA's averaging guidance about using adjacent census block groups. So pretty wonky, maybe hard to do just kind of off the top of your head. So we have a whole map that pulls in census data to do that for you. So those are just a handful of examples of what we have on our website or available that we can share with you. If you want to go to the next slide, I think I have a few more examples to share here. This is our website. And so under the programs section, we have it broken down by school breakfast, summer meals, after school, some resources on early childhood and whatnot. But I would say that school breakfast, summer and after school are kind of the core programs that we work on and have the most resources around. Our playbook section is more audience specific. So if you're a nonprofit organization versus a state agency versus a school, kind of pull together resources specific to that. And then policy and advocacy, obviously for policymakers and legislators and elected officials. And our research section as well has a lot of great tools. And then the webinars at the very top in that orange bar is another great one to look at if you're curious about our webinars. You can go back and listen to any recording of a webinar that we've ever done, basically. If you go on to the next slide, I just want to highlight this. I feel like it's come up in some conversations that I've had so far. We have a whole collaborative planning toolkit that can be really helpful in helping to drive change in your community. We specifically developed this around summer meals, but we think it's really helpful for after school meals and frankly any program. So this whole section of our website runs through, you know, what is collaborative planning and how to do it, and then we have like sample meeting agendas and things like that to help you actually lead a meeting and not have to reinvent the wheel as much as possible. So this is really about driving collective impact and pulling in all the stakeholders to really maximize what you're able to do based on everyone's different strengths and resources that they have. If you go on to the next one, this is our summer meals outreach toolkit. So it has a lot of graphics that everyone is welcome to use. It includes a lot about our texting hotline, and that works nationwide. So again, there may be a situation where if there isn't a summer meal site, someone would text and get a response back that says there is no summer meal site, but it works in every state. And we base that on USDA data. And in some states, we actually have a partnership where we pull data directly from the state agencies. So we're able to update the texting hotline more quickly than we're able to get USDA data. We only get that on like a weekly basis. So just throwing that out there, that's an option if you want a texting hotline that's a little bit more responsive and stays more up to date based on changes in state operations. We can definitely do that. We have a great technology team that helps with all of that. And all of the materials have the USDA equal opportunity statement on here. So for the state agency folks in the room, you know that organizations can use these and still be in compliance with federal civil rights regulations. So that's another great bonus. So yeah, I encourage you to go and look through there for anything that may help in your efforts to promote summer meals, since I think that's on the agenda next. And that is all that I have. So I blazed through that. There are so many more resources than I could conceivably talk about during a call without monopolizing the entire meeting. But if you ever think like, hey, this would be really helpful to us, or hey, has anyone else ever done this? Don't hesitate to ask. I've got my contact info there. Obviously, you can ask during meetings. And if I don't know off the top of my head, I've got my colleagues here who work on other programs or who work in other states that I can definitely ask. So hopefully this is all helpful to you to help the work group be as effective as possible. Thank you.
Great. Are there any questions for Carolyn from the group this morning?
I have a quick question. Thank you, Carolyn, for that update. So we've been talking a lot about how we can better use our data and our participation data.
Mm-hmm.
And something that's come up is I'm wondering if you've seen an example or if you guys have ever looked at census block data in comparison to actual meal counts and participation rather than actual just participating sites, but drilling down further into meal counts?
That is a fascinating question and one that I would not work on directly since I work more on after school meals and that training and technical assistance, but I'm going to make a note of that and talk to my research colleague. I know they've been doing a lot more wanting to look at how to compare participation data to at least free and reduced price eligibility just to get a better sense of how well these programs really are working, because if we always look at it in comparison to lunch participation, if there are things affecting lunch participation, then that kind of also affects what you think of your other program participation. And like I said, I know we have all of that census data because we use it in our average area eligibility map. So I can see if there's a way to match that up in any way that's easy, or if there's something that we could work on specifically with you or in certain locations. So yeah, thanks for bringing that and would love to discuss further.
I think we're going to have a lot of data questions for you.
We
have
have
two
a lot of
questions.
people here who really love to nerd out about data, so keep them coming.
That's great. That was a great presentation. Two questions related to your texting efforts.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have states that have been really effective at using texting and where you're getting like a high volume? I think we don't see that here yet, and it's certainly going to come up in, I think, our conversation today. And then the second part of that question is, do you know of any states that have actually used outbound texting, where maybe potentially like family resource centers are texting their families about the availability, or certain state agencies are targeting families with kids 0 to 18 on other programs about summer meals, and then just sort of outgoing maybe behavioral health nudge or behavioral economic nudging platforms?
I'll say on the latter, we haven't done anything like that at scale. I can talk with our innovation team. I know they've been working on some things around WIC, and I think that's more so where we may have done that just for reminding people about appointments and making scheduling easy and things like that. So I will also make a note to look into that and follow up. And then I will say, as regarding the texting data, I can't tell you off the top of my head where I would say like the state that had the most texts relative to like population. If there's an answer to that question, I can try to find it after this meeting. But I will say our texting dashboard is fascinating and really easy to visualize where people were sending text messages, and were they sending more text messages in June versus July versus August. And I was playing around with the Colorado summer 2018 data this morning, a little bit of time that I had. And I saw that Greeley actually had more text messages than Denver. So Danielle, I don't know if you had anything to do with that. Thank you if you did. So I think things like that can actually be very local based on where there is a trusted local partner providing information about the texting hotline. So some people may hear about it on Facebook or some kind of like national news without a connection, but I think where there are schools or trusted community organizations sharing information about it, it can make a really big impact.
I want to share with the group, just for the sake of knowing, the reason that is because all of our media and all of our flyers and all of our banners and all of our marketing materials have text 877-877. Even our summer workforce t-shirts have that on them, rather than our locations, because it's so complicated to feed in a school district, we never know what administrative building is going to be open for what given time. So it's easier for us to advertise the text number for our families to find the closest location to where they are.
Yeah, thank you. That sounds awesome, and we'll definitely spread around that everyone should put it on all of their t-shirts. But yeah, I mean, other than sending out a list of 100 different sites that each have different like dates that they're open and different meal times, it is much easier to just have one thing that everyone can use based on their location. So they can type in an address or a zip code and get back their 3 closest meal sites along with their times. And again, the more quickly we're able to update data, the more we can update that based on sites that have opened or closed so that we are sending families to the best location possible.
I have a question about the innovation work that's going on. We've been in talks with Kirsten as part of the grants team in terms of expanding on the community meals program. And so I'm just wondering if everybody else is already aware of that, and if not, if you would mind sharing some info about that, and then any other innovation work that you're working on along those lines.
Yes, thank you for that. And I should have mentioned it since I know Colorado has been a really great partner in that innovation work. So our community meals model was started as a way to expand access in rural communities where there may not be a traditional, public community space that a lot of kids can get to. Like a school or a library or a rec center or what have you. So the community meals model relies on families opening up their homes as the meal site, whether they serve inside or they serve on picnic tables outside. But the idea being that if they're in a relatively residential area, it might be easier for kids to get to that home than to some other congregate location. Because it is still congregate, it still fits within the federal requirements. And so they work with a sponsor to deliver the meals. It's not the families preparing the meals themselves in the models we've tested. And so the, adult in the household basically serves as that site manager and works with the sponsor to run the program out of a home. So that's one example. We are looking to expand it this summer to work with more sponsors, just to really test that it can work with a lot of different sponsors at scale. But have found great success with it over the past 2 summers that we've been testing it, and have USDA support to continue, even if USDA won't, publicly promote as the thing that states, must do. But thank you for your support, Colorado. As for other innovation work, I know we did a survey, a national survey, looking for organizations doing innovative work across programs, and are doing some grant making based on that, called Innovation Accelerator. And if you're interested in diving more into innovation, I should probably pull on my colleague Kirsten, since she could tell you so much more about all of the different things that she's learned through that survey, specifics about what we're funding through the Innovation Accelerator, and other projects coming down the pike. But yeah, they're a great team that does a lot of fascinating work.
Any other questions at this point? Okay, thanks, Carolyn. This has been great.
Thank you.
Okay, turn it over to you.
Okay. All right. So just before I dive in, I'm really excited to serve as the chair, and feel free to reach out anytime if you have ideas on things you want to talk about that you want on the agenda in the meetings. You can email me directly, or we can talk about it here as a group. So just to throw that out there as we move forward. But we were talking and we realized, I think like Carolyn mentioned, over the last couple meetings, we've all had a chance, well, a couple of people, partners have had a chance to update the group about the work they're doing. But collectively, I don't think we've actually gone around the room and really talked about what we see our organization's role is in supporting Workgroup 5 work and supporting child nutrition programs. So we thought it would be a good time to just revisit that question and ask the group about, what is your organization's role in supporting the work so we can better understand how we might partner together and align our common goals. So with that, do you want to start? Sure. Okay.
Hi, again, my name is Naomi. I'm from CDPHE and I am the CACFP director. You heard me present on our program last month, but I think overall we can look for opportunities to feed kids and adults in areas where NSLP might not be able to, but also outside of schools, childcare centers, homeless shelters. When there is a disaster, there's an opportunity to use CACFP as well. I don't want to take up too much time because I know we're going to go around the room, but in general, I think that's how we can support work group number 5.
Okay, so yeah, I'm Melissa again with USDA Food and Nutrition Service, and I think that our contribution, Megan and I, Megan's with the schools program, is probably pretty similar, but more possibly along the lines of providing guidance and brainstorming on how to actually implement some of the ideas. And so that way, you know, if we're working perhaps in an area, as Naomi spoke of within the CACFP, you know, we can make sure that we're all working together and that we're implementing things that are in compliance, you know, with federal requirements, and also taking information back perhaps to FNS if there are barriers or issues that we're encountering in order to move forward with some of the ideas. Perhaps those are some of the things that we could do and brainstorm how to reduce barriers, increase access, and probably a whole lot more. But that's, I think, off the top of my head, that's probably a good start for how we might be able to help. I feel really nervous all of a sudden. So I wear a few different, let's call them capes, not hats, okay? But this is of particular interest to me, this topic around school food. And so from my different roles, my current role with the Colorado League of Charter Schools is to find opportunities where we can build equity around school meals and make sure that kids in charter schools, there are over 250 charter schools, over 160,000 kids, and making sure that those opportunities for meals are the same as what district schools get. And I'm finding there's some gaps in there, but in that I'm finding tons of opportunities. So one example I'll tell you that's very specific is I'm working with a charter school in Pueblo. They have 1,000 kids, and their food service director is Jill Kidd. And so I talked to Jill Kidd the other day, and we were talking about the need for summer meals in Pueblo and access to food across the whole community. And she said, well, I'd love to have a truck like Dan Sharp has. And she said, but I don't know how he gets his money. And I said, I think he just asked for it. And so I said, I'm meeting with a funder this afternoon. Do you want me to ask if you can have some money? And she said, sure. So I met with a funder, and the funder said, I'd love to help her. So that's what I do. I'm like an opportunity broker. I match make people to opportunities, and I'm really interested. And that's kind of what I do across all my work. So that's my league work. On the other side, I'm really excited about the investments that have been made in Colorado in school food, and we have much to be proud of here. DPS has done a tremendous job in bringing more fresh, local, scratch, healthy, delicious, and I've seen that firsthand. But unless we market and promote school meals, we won't continue to see this kind of food and programs. I was talking to Dan Sharp yesterday, and he said, Rainey, I have to market my program. We've made all these investments. I want to keep them, but the price of food is going up, and it's making it harder to do this. So unless we elevate the programs themselves and promote them and do it effectively, just like Panera's does, just like Einstein does, and we get our messages a little more sexy around this, I don't think it's going to work. So I'm really interested in anything to do with promotions and marketing. I've been helping LiveWell with that. We have over 40 tools, a big toolkit, lots of great videos, working on a project with DPS that's been really fun. So those are kind of where my opportunities are, and again, brokering opportunities to helping kids have better access to food. Sorry for all that, but there you go.
Hello, my name is Teresa Pena, and I work for Denver Public Schools in Food Nutrition Services. And I would say just like Rainey has addressed the opportunities and challenges, I think the opportunity has been in partnering with Rainey and with LiveWell, we've really been able to come up with a pretty specific marketing and branding strategy that has really taken off internally. We have not seen that relate to an increase in actual participation. So I think we're going to have to keep working on that, because while we've made a lot of internal changes, I don't think our parents are really aware of it. And when we've done focus groups, what we have found is that our Spanish-speaking families that qualify for free and reduced lunch know the least of what we're doing and are the most critical about school meals. And when we operate one-on-one, they're really surprised about how school meals have changed. What we have found with the most friendly group was our English-speaking free and reduced lunch families. They were pretty aware of what we're doing and very supportive of it. What our data has shown, and despite the demographic change in Denver, we still have about 68% of our kids who are free and reduced lunch. We've lost the greatest market share in kids who qualify for free and reduced lunch. So that's a huge concern for us, because kids who actually get free meals are choosing not to take those meals. So we're really concerned about that, which is one of the reasons we did a focus group. Our paid families have stayed consistent. So about 10% of our paid families, which is about a third of the district, participate. That's higher at elementary, obviously, than at secondary, but we haven't been able to increase that. So our journey in the marketing that Rainey talked a little bit about, that we've done with LiveWell as well as with Rainey's team, is how do we create a food service program that's for all kids? So unlike Boulder, that has a very small percentage of kids that qualify for free and reduced lunch, and has kind of a pretty steady state for participation rate, we're really trying to kind of increase that rate. And honestly, we're struggling. And so the partnership that we've had with LiveWell and with Rainey and a whole team of marketing experts behind that has been really important for us to try and get data back from students and their families and our staff. We have found our staff could be a huge obstacle or a huge advocate. And it depends school by school. So where we could get our staff to try school meals, they're huge advocates. And where they have biases about school meals, they're really turning kids off. So I think for us in the district, it's a lot about partnership and how we really transform SFAs into being an SFA for all kids, not just for poor and children of color.
Hi, I'm Megan again with the USDA, work with Melissa, and would echo everything she said, but also the way that our office is structured, we oversee school meals in CACFP in summer in 10 states. And so we have points of contact, obviously, in all of those states. And I think similar to what we heard about Share Our Strength with all of their work about information sharing and sharing best practices from other states, I think we can also bring that to the table, because we know a lot of details on what other states are doing with their school meals and CACFP and summer programs. So potentially offer that insight to see if any of those ideas would fit, or just share some best practices there too.
I'm Deborah Cameron with Human Services, and what I do is distribute food to the state of Colorado for CACFP agencies and school districts. So our funding is basically food based on total lunches served. So the more total lunches served that are done throughout Colorado, the more food we can distribute. So we're a huge advocate of that. We also work as a team with our household program, who is also on different groups of Blueprint, and our director, I believe, is on the board, and we have monthly meetings to talk about what we've all learned and what we can contribute to the Blueprint as well as Human Services.
Hi, Julie with Food Bank of the Rockies. I'm not going to comment too much because I'm still relatively new, so I'm settling into my role, so I'm still kind of figuring out exactly what I'm doing. But for the most part, just working with CACFP and summer meals, kind of expanding and recruiting different sites for us and increasing participation in the sites that we already have.
Good, Julie. Good job. I'm Kathy, again, Nutrition Network with Food Bank of the Rockies, and I, like Julie, am really new to the organization, so I'm not sure that we've entirely figured out what we're doing as an organization yet. We have a new CEO in place, so we're trying to figure some of that stuff out, but we do participate in CACFP and the summer program. We also have a Totes for Hope program where we send backpack meals home to kids on the weekend. And I think I would just echo what Julie said. We have a big push to recruit new sites to the programs and also to increase participation within the sites. So more building relationships. So building relationships with all of you would be important as well. And for me personally, I want to see us not only getting food out to these kids, but nutritious food.
I'm Lauren with Food Bank for Larimer County. So we act as a sponsor in our county. I believe we're the biggest summer sponsor. We're going to serve about 22 sites this summer. One thing that food banks have access to is Feeding America organizes across our network. So there's 200 different food banks that are part of the food bank network under Feeding America. And they provide resources, contacts, best practice sharing for different programs. So organized around kind of anything that you can think that a food bank would do. So we have essentially an internal Facebook platform where you're able to post messages, ask for advice from different food banks, that type of thing. And then they coordinate different toolkits similar to Share Our Strength and recommendations for food banks acting as sponsors in this area.
So I'm Gabby. I know many of you already from my previous role as well, but so I'm still fairly new to CDE, School Nutrition Unit, and my role there is really to move this blueprint project along on behalf of CDE for Goal 5, and that has to do with the needs assessment, which we talked about in a couple of meetings previous to this one, as well as really working with the community engagement, stakeholders, partnerships, in my new capacity to vocalize what we're doing, why we're doing it, the value of it, and bringing more of this type of work to the School Nutrition Unit office, which is, it's for compliance, but is able to do a lot of other fun things. So I'm excited to be here.
I'm Jessica with Live Well, Colorado, and one of the big things that the organization does is a lot of policy work to really help reduce barriers that inequitably affect communities of color and low-income communities with their access to healthy eating and active living. So we do really try to work hard on just different bills that we can pass, whether it's at the state level, county level, and also at the federal level. And then the other work that we do, that applies to one of the other work groups is the Double Up program, which provides access to fresh fruits and vegetables to SNAP participants, and that helps double their dollars. So that's a great way to help, again, create more access to fresh fruits and vegetables, especially local products. And then with the school food initiative that we're doing, that's really to help reduce that stigma, increase meal quality, and increase participation in our school meal programs around the state, and really try to create more of that understanding around the value that our school meal programs bring to the community. And then we also have our Local Procurement Colorado program, which is focused on supporting not only our schools, but also other institutions with their healthy procurement, and especially focusing that on local to be able to help increase the amount of local products that are going into our healthy institutions, and also to help support our agricultural communities as well, and really start to build that back-end infrastructure so that we can have more access to fresh fruits and vegetables.
So my name again is Jackie Pines, and I am about a month into working with the Family Resource Center Association. Their FRCA is an intermediary level organization, so we have 30 member centers, family resource centers across Colorado. And so I know Patty would be able to speak to that a little bit more in terms of implementation, but also potentially bringing other voices to the table. I know they already do a lot with food assistance, like Cooking Matters is a big one. And then personally, I've worked recently for a while with Sun Valley Kitchen and Community Center, which is they partner with the Sun Valley Youth Center, and so they do meals for kids Monday through Friday, and they also do summer meal assistance as well, like cooking classes. So being able to either like report back or bring some innovative ideas from them would be really cool.
I'll just briefly share. I think one of the things that I bring is the ability to look across the 5 blueprint goals and how just interactive they are, and the ways that we can look at policy and investments. And I think the other piece that I can bring is the many folks that I've talked to and presented to across the state over the last 2 years, providing a lot of inspiration about hunger being solvable and getting people to really want to participate in this, and then plugging them in relevant ways to work across their systems and in their communities, with people with lived experience being at the table at all of these meetings. And so that right now, again, similar to Rainey, trying to connect really important cross-systems initiatives and looking for opportunities to fill those gaps, especially with 4-day school districts and rural, and capitalizing on what we know we can do well and what federal programs are available.
Okay, can we hear from the folks on the phone? I'll start up at the top. Carolyn, is there anything you want to add in addition to what you already presented on?
No, I think that what I presented earlier tied in pretty well to this conversation, just in terms of sharing those resources that we already have and best practices from other places across the country.
Great. What about Danielle?
I think in addition to what you guys already know about the Greeley-Evans School District nutrition programs, you know, we're taking advantage of every reimbursable federal child nutrition program wherever we can and expanding that. But I think the other thing that I would challenge my peers who are also leaders of departments in the room is that we are also working towards equitable pay for our staff. We employ 207 people in Greeley proper, and those are often people who are in the lines of our food banks and who are taking advantage of our service because we are the lowest paid class in any school district. So increasing that wage to make it livable is the other thing that we are doing here in our own department to try to end this problem of hunger.
Thank you. Erica?
Stop on mute. You know, I am on this group as a representative of the Colorado School Nutrition Association, and we are, you know, of course, the state representative of the National School Nutrition Association. And I think, you know, our role here is to represent about 850 operators of school meal programs. And, you know, the commitment that we have is to spread best practices and the work that is being done on this group to our members. We have that's through, you know, professional development, through conference and seminar activities, and I think that is our goal, is to connect our members to best practices that are happening around the state and also around the country.
Thank you. Doug?
Hi, everyone. So I'm with Jewish Family Service, and what we do, we are a summer food service provider. We sponsor 16 sites, and we roughly feed about 870 kids throughout the summer. We give out about 22,000 to 23,000 meals throughout the summer. And, you know, we've been doing it for 6 years. I've been with the program for 6 years now, and we're just trying to make sure that those little gaps that are within the city, that we can cover them. We have 5 buses that we use as mobile feeding devices to get around town, and you know, we have really good relationships with our community. We actually started a mobile pantry. We go out once a week and we let the parents know, and they can come and they shop, and we do a lot of food rescue. There's no paperwork involved because this is something that we do ourselves, and it's hopefully going to help us increase our numbers for summer as well.
Thanks, Doug. Stephanie?
Hey all, so this is Stephanie from the Children's Campaign. Sorry, here's some feedback. I think our main role is to support the direct service providers that are in the room. We don't necessarily provide services to communities, but we do advocate on behalf of the communities that we represent. So for folks that don't know who the Children's Campaign is, we're a statewide policy and advocacy organization, and so we do a lot of work that we hear from our It's About Kids network, which are folks around the state that are working in the front lines, very much so like you all. And I think the reason we got into this work is because we heard there was kind of a time period in which kids were finishing school and heading into summer and weren't getting those meals. And so to the extent possible where we can advocate for policies at the statewide level that will address and support some of those support some of the programs that already exist, whether it be through funding or whether it be through creating new programs. I think that's the support that we can lend. And some of the work that we're doing through the Lunch Cabinet Coalition, which a few folks that are in this room are part of that group, currently at the legislature around school lunches. So I think mostly in the legislature is where we provide that support.
Thanks, Stephanie. Last but not least, Ashley.
Hi, everyone. As I mentioned, my role with the Department of Education is the Summer Meal Program Supervisor. And so we, in my role, I provide support and training to sponsors and sites of the program in order to feed healthy meals to youth during the summer. And we're also focused on strategies to increase access and participation in the program. So really working on innovative models within program requirements.
Thank you. And I just remembered I need to go as well. So I think from the state agency perspective, I look at us as really a connector and someone who can share information with that statewide lens and statewide reach. So we can provide program data, and like Gabby said, we're conducting a year-long needs assessment to better understand increasing participation and access to these programs. So we look forward to sharing that information. Also really taking the work from the blueprint and incorporating that into some of the services we provide to school districts and sponsors through our training and through our communications and resources. And also through our communication channels too, being able to share the great work that you're doing as well. So really that connection piece is how I see the state really supporting this work. All right, well I think that was really helpful. I'm really excited that we're all in the same room. So thanks to the Blueprint for mobilizing us and getting us working on these issues. So I think next, we met and identified when we were planning this meeting. I know we talked about the summer meals program in our last meeting, and there's a huge opportunity right now. It's very timely. We're gearing up for summer. We're sponsors are applying for the program, and we're starting to ramp up our marketing and outreach efforts. So we wanted to spend the rest of the meeting talking about what resources are available in promoting the summer meals program, as well as breaking out into groups and really brainstorming how we each individually and our organizations can support promoting summer meals this year, as well as some opportunities we can do as a collective group in support of the Blueprint. So I put together a couple slides. I don't know. Just to tee off the conversation, I wanted to go over a few of the documents that I shared in advance of this meeting, as well as go a little more in depth on some of the resources that we have that we can provide that Ashley talked about last meeting. So again, one of the first couple meetings, we identified, I think there's about 6 or 7 strategies under Goal 5. And as a group, we all identified increasing the capacity, collaboration, coordination of agencies, organizations, and schools to ensure full year access. And so within the last couple meetings, we've had a lot of conversations around 4-day school weeks, summer meals program, CACFP. So we think that talking about summer right now is a really great time to be able to take some actionable steps right now. So in the email that Kevin sent out and also in the Google Drive, and we have a couple handouts, we have an outreach toolkit on our website, and I'll go through that in a minute on the next slide, but really just giving an idea to everyone of what resources are available that you might be able to use in your communities. I also provided a participating sponsor and site list from last year. We'll have the 2019 sponsor and site list in mid-May that we'll share out, but this is will give you a good idea of who's currently participating in your community when we look at where we might be able to target outreach efforts. I also provided last year's participation data. So I don't know if I know it was shared yesterday, but it's a good spreadsheet to dive into to look at year-to-year trends and look at meal counts for the summer meal program within sites, the city, and county. As well as, like Carolyn mentioned, that we also are tracking number of text messages and hits to the Kids Food Finder by city. Additionally, I know a few questions came up around legislation around the summer food service program, so I shared a great resource from the FRAC that shows what other states are doing as far as legislation around the summer food service program. And last but not least, I shared some magnets with everyone. I have, oh, yeah.
It does stick on metal, Bob.
Sticks on water bottles. That's a great, easy marketing. I brought 500 with us today. So, and we also have an order form. We do have, quantities are limited, but these are great ways to provide to families in your community. So if you're interacting with those families, feel free to take some of these after the meeting. And then also you can order more through that magnet order form. So I'll just quickly go through what is in our outreach toolkit, as well as some ideas on how we can look at promoting the summer meals program. Easy wins are social media. We have a lot of social media copy on our website that you can easily plug in and communicate out to your audiences. Customizing a press release and sending it to local publications. I think that might be interesting to think about too, as far as the Blueprint as a whole, trying to get media coverage around the summer meals program. We have a robocall in English and Spanish from Governor Polis that if you have the ability to reach families via the phone, you can send that out. And I believe Hunger Free has had a lot of success with the robocalls, as well as, like Jennifer, you mentioned before, you also have those phone numbers, text messaging, the summer text line. Placing advertisements in local media outlets, either using paid or added value media. As Danielle said, promoting the text line or other site locator resources in everything, in all of your communications or even your t-shirts. Also engaging local leaders, superintendents, anyone in the community who can help get the word out, which could include creating public service announcements. So on our website, we've worked with our communications department to create some customizable outreach templates, which includes postcard magnets that you have here, website banners that you can use on your website, posters, door signage, banners, yard signs. So a lot of good information on that outreach toolkit.
Like the yard signs and are they in English and Spanish?
Yes, I believe so.
Sorry, I mean, you can answer it later. I don't want you to have to stop your presentation.
Ashley, is everything in English and Spanish?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, thanks. That was okay. So where to target? I know this question has come up, you know, where's the opportunity? I did want to, one of our early findings from our survey results is that when we asked about the opportunity to increase participation in the summer meals program, 58.5% of our SFAs reported a high level of opportunity, meaning that few students are currently participating. And then 22% of SFAs report a moderate level of opportunity, so about half of students are participating. So even just looking at that data there, roughly 80% of our SFAs operating summer meals program are saying that there's a big opportunity to increase participation. Other resources you can use to think about your outreach is using the USDA Capacity Builder Map, which we've shared. So you can look at sites that are participating, and you can look at that census block information and overlay with other data points. And then also the meal count participation data I provided, as well as those site and sponsor lists. So this gets into the conversation we're going to have here in our breakout sessions, but really thinking about what partners that you can tap into to really make a community effort around promoting summer meals program. I mean, what we've seen is that, which is not surprising to anyone in this room, that community level effort and mobilization is a key to success and raising awareness of the program. And so here's a list of a lot of different people that can help get the word out, libraries and rec centers and food banks, faith-based organizations and childcare centers. Does anyone have any questions on any of that?
Carrie,
the resources?
You said that these items are customizable. So does that mean the organization pays for the printing?
Mm-hmm.
You just have the times we could take if you have to.
Yeah.
Do all that.
Yep. So, they would have to be printed locally.
And do you think there's a barrier with cost to folks utilizing those and really getting the word out?
Yes. Yeah, there is.
So,
today would be great.
Wonder if there could be a recommendation for a small pool of funding to get some marketing out so we could offset the cost.
Yeah. As you know, it can be expensive, media, all those things. So
yeah, I was like, where can I pick up yard signs? I'll put them all over my neighborhood, which is low income, and then I mean, that would be, if it's up to individual organizations.
Mm-hmm.
Wonder
how we would even understand the cost.
So
I can speak to one of it. We order sandwich boards to have near our mobile food truck, and that's $120 just for a two-side sandwich board. So anything, to replicate those types of things or use yard signs definitely become prohibitively expensive. We obviously can print flyers and things like that, but any additional marketing materials are often hard for us to justify just because the reimbursement is for SFSP mostly covering our costs, and for CACFP usually we're running short just because of the proportion of meals and snacks we do. So we have to just make sure our programs are financially sustainable, obviously.
Thanks. Jennifer, I think it's a fine idea to maybe request a small pool of funding for Workgroup 5 and Carrie. If we want to do something like that, I think we can take that back to the Governing Council. I also want to just put out there for the other sponsors in the room. We did our first round internally, and we just put that in advertising and marketing in our budget for SFSP. As we continue to have to replenish those banners, because we do the big 8-foot ones and hang them on the fence, I've actually had really good luck partnering with local for-profit organizations in my community, specifically real estate agencies, because of the high property value as we continue to grow as a community. So sponsors in the room, you might have success finding for-profit companies in your community that want their logo on that banner that says we help sponsor summer meals, and they'll buy those banners for you, or yard signs, or whatever it is. Is there a delay?
Great.
Can you guys hear me?
No, that was just me thinking.
Okay.
Sorry. If we could break out into maybe we have enough people on the phone to do their own breakout group? Is that?
Yeah, I think.
Okay. If we could break out into 3 groups here in the room, and then a 4th group online, and take some time, maybe about 20 or 30 minutes, to talk about what actionable steps can your organization and/or Work Group 5 do right now to increase participation in the summer meals program. We've already identified one area of opportunity, and also, similar to what Danielle was just sharing, any effective ways of who you've partnered with in the community or who we could be partnering with that we're not currently, to really get the word out and get support around this outreach. So if you want to just.
Yeah, so the room next door is open, so one of the groups could use that. I'll put everybody on the phone into a breakout group and then join that. So just give me about a minute to get on there. So that'll be another group, and then we could probably get 2 in here. Do you think, Carrie? 2 groups in here? Do you think that'll work? Okay.
So we're tasked with making a list of actionable steps our organizations can do to get the word out? Mm-hmm. Okay. Should we make, well, never mind, I'm too saucy.
And when we debrief, I think it'd be good as a group to think through on how can we track our efforts as well. So it'd be great to have this collective effort and see how this impacts summer meals this year. Also, what other data or resources do we need in order to do this? And then how we can keep the conversation going in the coming months. So.
Can I add one point to the signage?
Yeah.
There's also a time barrier, not opportunity barrier. What we need, I think, by the May time is to have those signs in this room, subset of so many per person to take out to our audiences. If we wait too much longer, if it's not time bound, we're going to lose the opportunity, because June's going to probably be pushing the limit of that. So if we find money, I think we've also got to deal with the time issue of printing and getting those ready to go. Which takes a while. Which can take a while. So yeah. Okay. I guess I want to count as organizer. Should we break out into count off or just do like we could section 1, 2, 3? Yeah. Okay. Like that. Yeah, I'll allow it. Hi, Lauren. Sure. To the TV Colorado.
Hey everyone, can you hear me?
Yes, I just had.
Okay. 1 second, I'm going to make sure the. Oh, sorry, Jim. Okay. So we'll just give it a second. It looks like everybody's in the room now. Can everybody hear okay?
That request for funding for yard signs?
Yeah, I heard that for sure.
Noted.
Wrote it down. Noted.
Hey everyone. Sorry, I just had to join the room, but it looks like we're all in here now. Can everybody hear everyone okay?
I think so.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah, I can hear the conversation.
Okay. Well, let me put the discussion questions back up really quickly since it was connected to the other computer. But feel free to start the discussion now while I'm getting those up, if you all would like.
Just for clear, for roles, Kevin, this is Sarah. I'm on and I'm going to just take notes for you all while you facilitate the conversation. Does that work?
That sounds great.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay, so you all should be seeing my screen with the presentation now. Can you see the discussion questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first question was, what actionable steps can your organization and or our work group do now to increase participation in the summer meals program? Does anyone have any ideas? Maybe Danielle, do you have anything that you'd like to share? Sorry, I don't mean to single you out, but
Yeah, no, that's okay. For some reason, my name appears at the top of the screen, so it will
yeah.
order. I would say that for us, 3 summers ago, when we identified that we were really underserving, I mean, we're still underserving, but we were really underserving the population. The first step for us was to look at the previous summer sponsor list and see what meals were being served by what organizations at what address, and ensure that there was still the opportunity and access for those families. As we know, the summer site sponsor list kind of ebbs and flows as faith-based organizations come in and out of that market share. We recognize that a lot of the summer meal providers are volunteer run, and we know that our volunteer base is aging extremely quickly. And so one of the first ideas that we ever had was to ensure that if there was a sponsor, that sponsor would be coming online again. And what we found out is that they weren't. So we were able to pick up some of those sites in the following summers.
Thank you, Danielle.
Well, this is Stephanie. I have a somewhat of a question, and I think it's going back to one of the spreadsheets that was shared through the email. I'm just curious. I know that there's like a few communities where I see a big jump in participation, and then conversely a decrease. And so I'm wondering to what extent there's like a coordinated outreach. And I apologize if this has already been discussed, but I just wasn't, I might have missed part of the discussion. And just for our purposes here at the Children's Campaign of how we can be helpful in reaching out to communities that maybe you all haven't gotten to yet or don't have the capacity to. And then the second part of the question is related to funding. And I know you all are probably more acutely aware of the level of funding that goes out for this. Can somebody address both of those, or is this the right place for that?
Ashley,
Hi, Stephanie. This is.
Oh, there you go.
Hi, this is Ashley. I can talk through a little bit on the stats that Carrie shared. So our office reached out to those sponsors that had a significant decrease in the number of meals from 17 to 2018, and we're conducting Kickstart sessions with some of those sponsors around access and participation. So we've reached out on just that foundational level to talk through what worked well for those that had increases, and then what areas of support we can provide when we did see that decrease. So that's kind of where we've focused right now as far as that data specifically. And then around funding, what was the question? Just the reimbursement, or?
Yeah, I think the general question was if you're hearing from communities specifically where there's a decrease, or communities that haven't even participated or don't have sites, if you've heard that the biggest barrier is funding, or like I know that might seem like an obvious question, but I don't really know the extent to which that's been answered or that's been clarified as you're having communications with folks.
Yeah, that's a great question. So part of the needs assessment survey that our office just conducted. We did a survey that went out to the school food authorities that operate summer programming, and then we also had a separate survey sent out to other sponsors like nonprofit organizations and government that sponsor the program. And so from that data, we're hoping to really understand the main barriers to participation, and just a few things that have stood out so far are more around eligibility. And so a lot of our rural locations where we see gaps in service don't qualify based on the 50% free or reduced requirements.
Okay. Got it. So they're not necessarily meeting that threshold, is what you're saying.
Right. So they might be at like 45%, but they're not at the 50% mark. I think funding does come up depending on the program that the sponsor is operating, to make sure that, if they have low participation, for example, that site might not be viable, but then looking at the broader picture of how to increase that participation. But we do hear that in general, the reimbursement covers the cost of the meals for the program.
Okay. Thank you so much. That's super helpful. And I apologize if you all have already shared some of those results from the survey. I know that there were preliminary discussions at the last work group meeting, but I didn't know if the group had delved into them any further. So I really look forward to hearing that. And then I have one more question, unless there's others that need to step in or have other questions. I don't want to monopolize the time.
Go right ahead.
Thanks. So the last question, Ashley, for you, and thanks again for providing this information, is what were some of the, can you share some of the other themes not related to eligibility that were raised around the decrease in participation, or if there were any that came out?
So as far as the survey results, we don't have those analyzed yet, so that's why we haven't had a discussion on that, so you didn't miss anything.
Okay.
As far as just anecdotally talking to some of the sponsors that had decreases, some of it was because they ended up having to close sites due to construction. Other instances that we heard from was that they are really trying to figure out what happened. They're unsure, and so looking at how they can better reach the community and provide that outreach. So I think it's really community specific.
Okay. Thank you. That's super helpful.
Hey, if I could, I'd like to add an idea to expansion based on Stephanie's question. We have local communities that don't meet that threshold, that 50% free and reduced threshold, specifically Johnstown and Windsor, which are not meeting that threshold. Ashley and I worked together last summer to try to figure out how can we get meals to them. And Ashley, I wanted to tell you, we figured out this summer what we're going to do. We met with those child care centers last week, and they're going to bring their kids for field trips to Greeley, to go to the museum, to go to the park, to go to the splash park, to go to the rodeo, and stop by one of our sites. So I think where we know we have an underserved population, but it doesn't meet that 50% free and reduced threshold because it's such a small population. Again, it comes back to that community connection that we make with people and try to provide those opportunities. And not every community is going to have a bus that they can load kids up on and go on a field trip, but if they're moving in between locations, then they can swing by an open site and eat lunch.
That's fantastic. And I know I've worked with Johnstown and some other SFAs within those pockets and in southern Colorado as well. And we've looked at other site types. So if they don't qualify for area eligibility, if there's a camp going on, we can look at what that looks like, or closed enrolled based on income applications. So we do try to identify ways that a site could be there. It may not be open though. I wanted to just throw this out to I guess probably you, Danielle. One thing I had heard recently was that one way that another state was reducing stigma was to have pop-ups. So a summer restaurant that was a pop-up, and so all kids were served free, and then they provided adult meals at low cost.
Mm-hmm.
Have any of you heard of these types of pop-ups happening?
This is Carolyn. I'll say that I know the person who runs that pop-up restaurant in Kansas. And if people are interested in learning more, I can pass along materials or connect you on how they run that. But they basically do like Chipotle style meals that meet the meal pattern requirements for kids, and then adults can purchase low cost meals. They're not open 5 days a week, I don't think. But yeah, it's definitely a different model, and they found it works in rural areas where parents are going to need to bring their kids, and it is impossible for kids to kind of walk up on their own, or if there isn't other programming, or it's just a way to offer meals in the evening versus a more traditional like breakfast lunch model.
Thanks.
Yeah, and Ashley, I think that's a good segue into, we probably have about 15 minutes left, so maybe we could take a look at the second question that was, a community approach is key to a successful summer meals program. Who in your community could you partner with to connect more families to the summer meals program? So that question and what you just brought up kind of made me think of Dan Sharp's presentation. I believe it was that last month. And I hope I'm not misremembering this, but I thought one neat way that they had the community involved is that they were using high school volunteers to actually help deliver those meals. And I thought that was really cool. I wonder if you all have any other ideas about how community members are involved in the program. It doesn't have to be through a volunteer approach or that they're working on it. It could be by gathering their input, things like that. What do you all have any ideas about that part?
Doug, I'm curious if you could share how you recruit all of the teachers that volunteer at your sites.
So what we've had success with is that we maintain a presence with our particular sites throughout the year. We do a lot of giveaways at the end of summer. We do backpack giveaways to make sure that the kids have all the school supplies ready. So, and that's something that the teachers really appreciate. And also throughout our program, we do book giveaways. We have, last summer, I think we gave away close to 15,000 books. And that's a big draw. And when we advertise and invite volunteers to come, we try to spin it that it's not just a meal program, but it's a literacy program. And we want to better prepare the children for a better future. So that's a big draw for some of our teachers that participate. Last year we had over 250 volunteers in our program, and most of them really were wanting to get involved with literacy. And we have a lot of part-time readers that come when we do our meal service. We are also reading to the kids and suggesting books that they might want to read over the summer.
Thank you, Doug. I like that use of kind of a positive incentive there. That's really hitting at not just food inequality or food insecurity, but also literacy as well. So that's awesome. Does anyone else have any other ideas about how community members could be involved or more engaged in the program? Or partnered with? It could be a community-based organization as well. No?
I feel like Ashley's picked this well dry already.
What was that?
I said, I feel like Ashley has picked this well dry already. Ashley, I don't know what we could be doing that we're not doing. I wish I did, because I'd be doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just that some things that came out of the recent sponsor training around different things sponsors are doing. Like, this is out in Garfield, but she partnered with the local car dealership, and for every car they sold, they gave the summer program, I think it was like $50 or something. And so that allowed her to expand into mobile feeding. So I think, it's really, again, it's community specific, but if there are additional for-profit organizations that can help either promote the program or provide funding for activities or adult meals, those strategies seem to help with participation.
Ashley, I want to share the idea of our neighborhood nights. I think everybody on this call already knows about this, but in that exact vein, we had for-profit sponsorship of movies in the park. And I think a lot of communities, all communities, have some kind of movie night in the park type thing. We went to that sponsor and we said, would you be okay with us feeding all the kids 18 and under for free? And they said, yes, please. And now we're going into our third summer. And I think there are a lot of families that come specifically because we feed all the kids for free at those movies. So it's just figuring out what it is in any individual community that families will gather at, and then showing up and feeding those kids for free.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. I like that example about kind of meeting people where they are already, and having it as more like a community event. And then that was a really neat example about the car dealership. I think when you get into that like creative thinking about fundraising, there's kind of no limit to what you can do. So I know a lot of other nonprofits, they'll convince like a restaurant to do a fundraising night. So like all proceeds from that are purchased for meals at that restaurant for that night, maybe like 10% go to the program. I don't know. I think there's a lot of possibilities with regards to that, and either spreading the word about the program itself or helping to raise funds for it. So.
And I think cities have been really great at partnering with our summer sponsors as well, and looking at rec centers and making it a program for all children, not just for children in need. So I think that's really key, is what you have all said around going to where families are already at or where kids are at, and the meal is part of whatever else is happening.
Is transportation an issue in a lot of places? I mean, I know it's always best to go where the kids are, but a lot of times kids are at home because they can't get anywhere else during the day. And I'm just curious if people have thought about that element of it and how much that is a barrier.
I think for sure it's a barrier. Within the city limits of Greeley, any District 6 student can use their student ID to ride the bus for free. But our friends down in Aurora had a situation where the sponsor site was on the other side of a 7-lane highway. And it doesn't matter if you can get on public transportation if your obstacle is 7 lanes of 80-mile-an-hour traffic. So transportation is always going to be an issue, whether it's urban or rural, which is why we see mobile food programs becoming more prevalent, because we know from experience that we can open our doors and say, please come to us, but we're going to feed more kids if we go to where there is already a kids activity being sponsored.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Transportation comes up often. And, I think that's one of the reasons that the community meals model is something that we're hoping goes well again this year. And we have more insight and able to expand this out to other sponsors where the model makes sense.
Hey friends, I apologize. I'm getting pulled away, and sometimes being a director is pain. So I appreciate this conversation, and I'm sad to miss the rest of this meeting, but I wanted to say thank you for your conversation. I really enjoyed it before I just ditch out of here unexpectedly. So bye-bye, and I will talk to you all soon, I hope.
Bye.
Thanks, Danielle.
Bye, Danielle. Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks.
Carolyn,
hey,
sorry, go ahead.
This is Sarah. I just throwing out in the transportation realm. Has anyone thought about or reached out to like Lyft or Uber in the space of transportation and partnership in this at all, maybe?
It's an interesting idea. I know in DC, Lyft has a local pilot to offer discounted rides to grocery stores in parts of the city that don't have grocery stores. So, I don't know if I've heard of anything specifically related to summer meals, but it is something that they've clearly shown an interest in, is supporting people having access to food. So an interesting thought.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree. That is an interesting thought, especially for adults. I think it sometimes gets tricky for minors. Because I think they want you to be 18 plus to use those services, but that's certainly something that could work for families or adults or something like that. So, Carolyn, sorry, go ahead.
I just had a question. It's in relationship to transportation, but not necessarily transportation itself, but about work around advocacy, so we could remove that obstacle where children have to stay and eat the meal at the site. That's something that we struggle with a lot. And I was wondering if anyone's doing any work around advocacy where we can give the child the meal, because what we see a lot of children come with their siblings, and then they try to leave to go eat at their home or in a safe spot because the parents are concerned that they might stay there.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering, is there any work being done around that?
Yeah. Talk of CNR seems to be coming up again in Congress, and so that would be the time to change the congregate meal requirement, since it does have to be done through law. So that's on the table at the federal level, but who knows exactly what the timeline is. Certainly don't hold your breath for this summer. And then I know the USDA rescinded some memos and guidance on several things, which I believe included waivers for, weather and other reasons why you wouldn't serve congregate meals. And my colleague has been working a lot on that issues in terms of working with states, working with sponsors, working with USDA where we can. And I can get an update from him on where that is. The other option that we've been working on both at a federal level and a state level is summer EBT. So that's where instead of going through congregate meals, you would have the option to give additional money to families to use like they would a WIC benefit or a SNAP benefit, and get extra money to just buy their own food. Particularly in areas where that congregate meal requirement is particularly difficult. So yeah, not exactly like a food bag or backpack or pantry model, but an additional source of funding for low-income families to procure their own food over the summer.
That's really interesting. That's something really interesting, really great.
And this is Ashley. I just wanted to add quickly that as far as what our office has looked at, last year we did submit a waiver to a national office to waive the congregate requirements at apartment complexes, and we were not approved for that waiver. And so, yes, reauthorization would be the time where sponsors and advocates can comment. And then with the summer EBT, that would be out of the Colorado Department of Human Services office, and they did not apply for that this year.
And we had talked about, some of the barriers that we're trying to overcome. As you know, Ashley, we used to do apartment complexes, but it was just too difficult to keep the kids there, and that's why we stopped doing and servicing apartment complexes.
Okay, everyone, I hate to.
That can be challenging.
I think that's an area where engaging community partners and activity providers can be helpful because, you know, where there are activities, it is a little bit easier to keep the kids on site so that it's not just that they're coming down for a meal and have to eat it there and there's nothing else for them to do or reason for them to be there beyond the meal. So I think kind of echoing things that people mentioned earlier in the conversation of having the meals tied to other things and having it be less about the meal exclusively and more of just like an added bonus to something else going on really helps to reduce the stigma and draw more people and keep them there to eat the meal. Easier said than done, though, I know.
Thanks, Carolyn. Guys, this is Stephanie. Just a quick question for you, Kevin, and maybe this is directed at you as well, Carolyn. Is there going to be some coordinated efforts from this group around the CNR piece? I know there's some national groups working on that, but is that at all of interest to this group, or would love to hear thoughts?
Yeah, I think, Sarah, if you wouldn't mind including that in the debrief that we're going to have here in a minute when the groups get together, and then we can talk to Carrie, the chair, about adding that to the agenda for the April meeting. But I think that would definitely be, you know, a worthwhile action. Does that work?
Yeah, that sounds great. Sorry, I was on mute.
That's okay. So with that, thank you, everyone. I'm happy this was a really robust conversation. They're calling us back into the room now. So like I said, they're going to do a debrief for each of the groups. So I'm going to close this breakout room, and you'll slowly be added back into the main room. So thank you.
Of ideas?
Yeah, or just since we have about 15 minutes, maybe some of the highlights.
Agreed.
And we were talking about in our group is that I was thinking that I could create a Google Doc in our
Perfect.
in our Google Drive, and so then that way we can track all of our efforts because we came up with a ton of ideas. So yeah.
Okay, well, I'll just pick a few from our list, but one thing that one group is doing live interviews at sites. So as opposed to static surveys or something sent out by email, I'm actually going to sites and having conversations about how to increase participation. We are working with, in terms of promotion at non-traditional kind of sites, promoting at mobile home parks, housing authorities, ideally with SNAP and WIC, posting menus in advance. We're suggested to draw kids in by the food choice instead of just promoting via kind of program participation instead, encouraging kids to come as a group, so whatever form that might take. We are going to do with our food truck punch cards for prizes. So every site we're going to go to 10 times during the summer, and if a child comes 5 times, we're going to give them a small prize just to encourage those repeat visits. And then we're also setting up programming partnerships for the summer. So we found a couple of summers ago that children are not necessarily wanting to participate as much if it's only free food. But if there's a programming element along with that, there seems to be more of a draw. And then there's also an opportunity for co-promotion there. So that can be a wide variety of things. We're working with bookmobiles. It was mentioned to bring live animals to sites, kind of a little petting zoo format. Police officers, just those types of kind of organizations that already want to be out in the community, leveraging those to boost participation at the site. Oh, and then one thing I mentioned that was asked specifically to call out was I've worked with McKenna at CDE to qualify a site that does not qualify any of the traditional ways. It's not area eligible, it's not share our strength, merged average census block group eligible, it's not school site eligible. But we wanted to run it as an open site. And so we got de-identified data from all of the residents at that housing authority site and sent that over to demonstrate kind of the average median income of individuals living at that site. And we were able to qualify it that way. So I just want people to know that that's a possibility if none of the traditional methods work.
Thank you. Do you guys want to share anything else?
I can share a couple things. I'd say one of the biggest things, we kept kind of talking big picture and how to keep scaling ourselves back to focusing on this year and this summer and what we can do this summer. And we think some of the immediate things that we can do is, one, utilize the double up program that Livewell has and be able to, if we can loop in the number into any of the double up materials that we have at our sites, if we could actually pair that in, that would be great, or at least be able to offer these materials at those sites that we have, whether it's Lowe's, the corner stores, or farmers markets, because we already know that people who are using the double up program are on SNAP, and so they're already potentially looking for access to food as well. So that could be a quick, immediate way to potentially start increasing interest and access, as well as utilizing the Family Resource Center and a lot of the parent groups that we have out there to really start spreading the word, reaching out to a lot of our partners, so like the ECLA councils that are around the state. How can we utilize them, even if this isn't specifically within their purview of the 0 to 5-year-old, this is still important, and they have community reach that they can utilize to start spreading that word as well. I'm sure there's some stuff I'm missing.
Yeah, I think some of the long-term items that were brought up is kind of the structure of summer and youth has changed. A lot of kids stay inside, and so the thought of maybe partnering with an outdoor company and GoCo to get kids outside, those same kids doing summer meals, but it's really just kind of a different time to be young, and screen time and being indoors, and so that's really a barrier. So kind of thinking about that as a lens in which we are serving summer meals, mobile sites, things like that. Something that was discussed as well.
Yeah, and I'd say we're, at least at Livewell, I'm definitely very curious in some of the legislation that's been put out. Just looking at that FRAC sheet, it's very interesting to see maybe, again, probably wouldn't be able to happen this year, but if there's something that we can maybe get into the legislator to be able to incentivize school districts or sites to be able to do this if they are at that 50% or more of certification, or if it's the funding piece as well, which I think will always be willingly supported if we can work to bring funding towards supporting these efforts. So that's something we're getting a bill.
Yeah, we talked a lot about long-term and short-term. One of the things we were wondering about is, again, like the Family Resource Center probably has close to 100,000 folks that they might be able to reach with robocalls or text. But the other one, and I don't know if this currently is happening, but could we leverage the Feeding Colorado network and the food pantry networks to put flyers about the program into grocery bags in like late May and early June? And I don't know if that's happening, but perhaps, one of us or several of us could talk with connections and see what it would take to do that. Is it printing? Is it already being done? I don't know if it's already being done. Maybe Ashley knows. But that to me would be a pretty low cost way of getting that flyer out.
In terms of Feeding Colorado, we send it out with our backpack programs that go to kids at school right now, but we could definitely, and we posted it at our main kind of client distribution sites as well. So I think that's probably happening somewhat, but we can definitely make a more concerted effort across our network to do that.
Melissa, do you know if Kroger still has their partnership with National Office to promote summer meals?
Hi, Ashley. I actually don't know if that is still taking place at the national office level. Were you thinking about like the grocery store receipts? Is that what you're talking about?
Not the receipts. I know that a couple of summers ago we were able to provide posters and flyers for the King Soopers and different Kroger stores to hand out, and then last year it didn't seem like they were still partnering, so I didn't know if you had any more insight on that status.
Yeah, I can look into that. So I'm kind of writing some things down, and so I can take a look at some of the partnerships that are still taking place at the national office level and even the regional level,
and see if there's anything that we can do to support some of the things that have been mentioned here today. So yeah, Ashley, I'm going to look into that for sure.
Awesome, thanks.
Sure, thank you.
Does the group back there want to share some ideas?
I was with them.
Oh, you're with them,
Yeah.
okay.
Around.
Then our group?
Well, we looked at what we can do immediately within our own networks and what sort of resources we have. And, you know, I have a lot of communication channels I can use to get out both in my professional network and in my personal network. So I'm going to tackle those just on a personal level. But Teresa brought up some excellent kind of long-term thinking around barriers, which involve just the size of your site or the size of your community. So for example, Jill kid we mentioned in Pueblo, it might be harder for her to actually run a summer meal program because of the financial incentive or lack of incentive perhaps to do it. It might be more challenging size-wise. And then the barrier of the quality of food sometimes is compromised because why? Because it's just reimbursable, right?
He might be doing
Year-round. And then the other really challenging piece is parents coming to these sites with their kids but not able to consume the meal. So we brainstormed some ideas around how that's being done. And St. Vrain has Share Your Change and just pay for an adult meal with some local businesses, and that's helping to offset some of those costs so the parents can come and eat. I mean, crazy, crazy barrier. And then there was a staffing, finding staffing for summer meal programs. So long range and then short term, what can we do immediately in terms of our own networks and resources to share this information out quickly? Signature line, put it on the signature line of your email. What else, guys? Anything else I'm missing?
A lot of different newsletters that can go out. Local public health landing pages with the website banners. Yeah. If we have a signature email in our emails with the text line, we can also encourage districts and other locals to include that as their signature. This might be an easy thing to do. What about that?
Sure. So Sarah was able to take notes during the call and has offered to debrief the group. So thank you, Sarah.
Yeah. So, and I am going to give you the notes that we have, but I want anyone who is on the phone to fill in the gaps that I'm not going to have here. So what we talked about in terms of actionable steps to do right now to increase participation was really looking at understanding who the summer sponsors are, knowing that they ebb and flow. We talked through some very specific questions as to why there may be increases or decreases in sites or the number of meals that are served or year over year. And Ashley, I believe, was the one who provided us with a lot of information there. I don't know if I want to get too much into those details, but I will let you all decide if you want to hear some of those. But questions around, is it funding that's the barrier? Is it other things? And really it came out more around eligibility and the 50% free and reduced requirement. And then, so with that kind of eligibility barrier of free and reduced requirement, Danielle brought up an example of something they're doing where in those smaller communities that don't quite meet the 50% free and reduced threshold, in those child care centers or in spaces where they are doing summer programs and activities, they actually are doing field trips into Greeley. And in those field trips, they stop by sites during the summer and actually feed the kids at the sites in Greeley that are eligible for the meals. And then there was a conversation about that someone had heard about something to reduce stigma was this pop-up restaurant kind of idea where kids eat free and parents can eat at a reduced cost. And can't remember who it was, but someone had said that they knew someone in Kansas who run those, and they called it a Chipotle-like meal, and it allows for meals in the evening and not just the traditional breakfast and lunch as well. So it was another unique idea. And then when we talked about some community approaches and community partners, we had one example of one site that was one organization who was using not just food insecurity, but Also giving out free books, so making it both food insecurity and literacy. And that brought different volunteers and more volunteers who are more interested in literacy but able to actually participate in both. And then some examples of, getting some funding in. So looking at different for-profit or other sponsors that could work within the community. One example was there was a partnership with a car dealership who donated, for every car they sold, they donated $50 to the Summer Meals program. And then another was really partnering with existing neighborhood night events, so movie nights or what have you, and saying, hey, if we came, could we feed the kids for free? And those, it seems kind of like a no-brainer for those community events and a great way to reach out to different community issues or community groups. And then we talked about transportation and how that's always going to be an issue. And that, yes, going to where communities are is always going to be the ideal, but not always feasible. And then we ended the conversation talking about, what are some advocacy things that this group might be able to take on. And again, this might get into more long-term, but around, sorry, you guys are probably seeing me squinting as I'm trying to read my notes here. So, are there ways to look at not requiring congregate meals as part of it? Is there other conversations about summer EBT and an increase of benefit in that over the summers? And a lot of conversation around why that hasn't happened, and I don't want to get into that. But the one question that we ended with that we wanted to put forth to this group was, is a possible coordinated effort from this group, could there be a coordinated effort around the CNR? And that's what we talked about.
Child nutrition reauthorization. But that was a question brought up by Stephanie, who had to hop off a little bit early of the call, but we were just going to see if that's anything that any other group discussed, and maybe we could discuss it at the April meeting or moving forward. But yeah, that's all I'll say about that. I know we just have about a minute left here, so yeah. Thanks, Sarah.
Great, that's a lot of really good ideas. I realize we have 1 minute. So I think probably the best way to capture a lot of this would be a shared Google Doc so that we can go in and collectively put in what we've been talking about and maybe what we need, even if there's some ideas that might not sure if it can happen, just what we might need to make it happen, and then we can revisit that at the next meeting. Does the Blueprint team have any other ideas on how we might also be able to keep this going and organize these efforts?
No, I think that's a great idea. I think one of the things that we kept trying to focus back on is, okay, so what can this group do? Where are the connections? And we were talking, and you committed to going back to Mark Kling and saying, can you, would you be interested or available to reach out to early childhood councils and get them on board to send this out? So part of it is us kind of going with all that we've heard, what can we do with our professional and personal contacts so that it's actionable, right? So we have a lot of good people in this room, and then we also have a lot of great people in other work groups, and how do we leverage all of those spheres of influence? And then clearly there were some communications pieces that came up, and I think we'll have to, want to have a follow-up call about what we might do with Work Group 1 and see if there's any resources there, right? So, but I do think getting the collective and saying who can do this, and if it's not you, who would you suggest, I think is a really important question.
Okay.
Since we're on timeline.
Yeah.
For this, for 2019 at least.
Right, yeah. Okay, well, I'll get that organized. So does anyone have any last parting thoughts before we adjourn? No? And also just what we have in the works for the next meeting is, I know we've been talking a lot about our needs assessment that we've been conducting to understand the opportunities and barriers to increase participation and access and support Goal 5. So in April, we're hoping to have our evaluators come in and start sharing some of those preliminary results and have a facilitated discussion on what we think about them, and so we can incorporate that into our analysis and planning. So thank you.
Great meeting. Well done.